The chamber stretched wider than any stadium on Earth, a massive ring of platforms suspended in the void of space. Each platform held representatives from the 12 elder species that ruled the galaxy. Their forms varied from crystalline beings that pulsed with inner light to massive creatures that floated in containment fields. At the center of it all, on a smaller platform that seemed deliberately designed to make its occupant feel insignificant, stood Ambassador Deho. He was a thin man with gray streaks in his black hair, wearing a simple dark suit that looked almost primitive compared to the elaborate garments and bioforms surrounding him. His hands rested calmly at his sides as he listened to the accusations being hurled at him from every direction. The translation devices in his ear worked overtime, converting hundreds of alien languages into words he could understand. Humanity has violated the sacred boundaries. The voice belonged to High Arbiter Velthuum, a towering being made entirely of blue crystal that reflected light in dizzying patterns. The Forbidden Zones have been marked as such for 3,000 years. Every species in this galaxy has respected these laws. Every species except yours. Deho said nothing. He simply stood there, his dark eyes moving from one council member to another, watching them carefully. Your colony ships have crossed into 6 different Forbidden Zones, continued another counselor. This one resembling a floating mass of tentacles with dozens of eyes. You have established permanent settlements. You have refused to respond to our communications. This is not merely a violation. This is an act of war against the entire galactic order. The chamber erupted with sounds of agreement. Some species banged appendages against their platforms. Others emitted sonic waves that rattled the very air. The translation devices struggled to keep up with the chaos. Councillor Genar rose from his platform. He was a Drexian, a species that looked almost human except for the gray skin and the bony ridges that ran across their skulls. The Drexians controlled the largest military force in the galaxy, and everyone knew it. We've been patient with humanity, Genar said, his voice cold and sharp. You are a young species. You have been part of galactic society for only 2 centuries. We have made allowances for your ignorance. But this? He gestured dramatically. This cannot stand. Deho shifted his weight slightly but remained silent. His expression gave away nothing. The Council has debated for 6 standard cycles, High Arbiter Velthuum announced. We have considered every precedent, every law, every possible interpretation. The verdict is unanimous. The crystalline beings seem to grow brighter. Humanity will withdraw all vessels, all personnel, and all equipment from the Forbidden Zones within 30 standard cycles. Failure to comply will result in corrective measures. The phrase corrective measures hung in the air like a threat. Everyone in the chamber knew what it meant. Military action, sanctions, possibly the complete isolation of humanity from galactic trade and travel. Some species had been destroyed for less serious violations. Do you understand, Ambassador Deho? Velthuum asked. Finally, Deho moved. He straightened his suit jacket and looked directly at the High Arbiter. I understand perfectly, he said. His voice was calm, almost conversational. You want us to abandon our colonies. You want us to pretend we never saw what we found there. You want us to bow to laws that were written before humanity even knew other intelligent life existed. Yes, Velthuum said simply. That is exactly what we want. What we demand. Deho nodded slowly. Then let me be equally clear. He turned in a slow circle, making eye contact with as many council members as possible. We refuse. The chamber fell silent. For several long seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. The concept of refusal seemed so foreign to them that they couldn't immediately process it. You refuse? Velthuum's crystalline form flickered with what might have been confusion or anger. You cannot refuse. This is not a negotiation. This is a decree from the Galactic Council. I heard you, Deho said. And we refuse. Counselor Jinar slammed his fist on his platform. You foolish child. Do you understand what you're saying? Your entire species numbers barely 20 billion across a dozen worlds. The Drexian Empire alone commands 3 trillion citizens and a military force that could turn your planets to ash. Deho looked at the Drexian without a trace of fear. Then I suppose you'll have to do that, he said quietly, because we're not leaving the Forbidden Zones. The chamber exploded into chaos. Dozens of species began shouting at once. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for economic sanctions. A few simply stared at the human in disbelief. Never in the 3,000-year history of the Galactic Council had any species flatly refused a direct order. High Arbiter Velthuum raised his crystalline arms, and a wave of force rippled through the chamber, silencing everyone. Ambassador Dio, he said, his voice now carrying an edge of something that might have been fear. Why? Why would you risk everything? The Forbidden Zones are forbidden for a reason. The dangers there are beyond your comprehension. For the first time, Deho smiled. It was not a happy smile. We found something in those zones, he said. Something you don't want us to find. Something that changes everything. There is nothing there but ancient ruins and dead worlds, Velthuum said quickly. Too quickly. Then you won't mind if we stay and study those ancient ruins, Deho replied. Unless there's something about those ruins you don't want us to know. The High Arbiter's crystalline form pulsed rapidly, colors shifting through the spectrum. This council is adjourned, he announced abruptly. Ambassador Deho, you have 30 cycles. We will not meet again unless it is to discuss your compliance. Deho gave a slight bow, more mocking than respectful. I look forward to not seeing you again then. He turned and walked toward the transport pad that would take him back to his ship. Behind him, the council members erupted into arguments and accusations. Their careful political unity shattered by a single word from a human dot as Deho materialized on his ship. His aide Kyungmi was waiting for him. She was young, barely 30, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. How did they take it? She asked. About as well as we expected, Deho said, allowing himself a genuine smile now. They're terrified. They know we found something, but they're not sure exactly what. And when they figure it out, Deho walked toward the observation window. Outside, the massive council station glittered against the stars. When they figure out that we found evidence of human civilization in those forbidden zones, evidence that predates their precious council by 27,000 years, he turned to look at Kyungmi. Then things are going to get very interesting. Fleet Admiral Jiwan sent a message, Kyungmi said, handing him a datapad. All defense fleets are at full readiness. We're ready for whatever comes next. Deho took the pad but didn't look at it. Instead, he stared out at the stars. We're not ready, he said quietly. None of us are ready for what's coming. But we're out of time. The council built their entire civilization on a lie, and that lie is about to be exposed. What do we do now? Now? Deho set the pad down and headed for the bridge. Now we wait for them to make the first move. And when they do, we show them exactly what humanity is capable of. The ship's engines hummed to life, pulling away from the council station. Behind them, the greatest political institution in the galaxy descended into chaos, all because one species had dared to say no. Fleet Admiral Jiwan stood in the command center buried 3 kilometers beneath Earth's surface. Holographic displays surrounded her, showing the positions of every human ship in known space. At 45 years old, she had spent her entire career preparing for a war that everyone told her would never come. Now that war seemed inevitable, and she felt strangely calm about it. Status report. she said to her operations officer. All defense fleets are holding position at the border zones. Colony evacuation plans are ready to execute on your order. The Indomitable and a battle group just completed their shakedown cruise. Captain Sunho reports all systems nominal. Ji-won nodded. The Indomitable was humanity's first warship built using technology reverse-engineered from the ruins they found in the Forbidden Zones. If the Council decided to attack, they were in for a nasty surprise. Any response from the Council? Nothing official. But our intelligence assets report that the Council is having emergency sessions every 6 hours. They're fighting among themselves. A small smile crossed Ji-won's face. Good. Keep them fighting. 3,000 light-years away, in a sealed chamber aboard the Council station, High Arbiter Velthuum was discovering that unanimous decisions were easier to make than to enforce. The 12 Council members sat in their designated spaces, but the unity they'd shown in front of Ambassador Daeho had completely dissolved. We must strike immediately, Councillor Zenar insisted, his gray face flushed with anger. Every day we delay makes us look weak. Send the Drexian fleet. We'll have their colonies burning within a week. And start a war we might not win? The speaker was Councillor Karvesh, a being that resembled a floating cluster of metallic spheres. His species, the Varani, had been part of the Council longer than any other. We know nothing about humanity's true military capabilities. They've been operating in the Forbidden Zones for at least 5 years before we detected them. What else have they been doing that we don't know about? They're a young species with primitive technology, Zenar shot back. What could they possibly have that would threaten us? Perhaps we should ask why they're so confident, another counselor suggested. Ambassador Daeho showed no fear. None at all. Either he's insane, or he knows something we don't. Velthuum's crystalline form dimmed slightly. Our intelligence services have been trying to penetrate human communication networks for the past 6 cycles. They've had no success. Either human encryption is far more advanced than we believed, or they anticipated our attempts and prepared countermeasures. There's something else, Karvesh said quietly. I've been reviewing the astronomical data from the Forbidden Zones where humanity has established colonies. The zones they chose aren't random. They're all clustered around specific star types, all within a particular age range. Why does that matter? Zenar demanded. It matters because those star systems match the age and composition of stars that would have been in their prime 30,000 years ago. Someone chose those systems deliberately, long before any of our species achieved spaceflight. The chamber fell silent. Every counselor understood the implication. The progenitors, someone whispered. Velthuum's form flared bright, then dim, then bright again. We do not speak of that myth in this chamber. It's not a myth if humanity found evidence, Karvesh replied. What if the ruins in those zones are real? What if they prove that an ancient civilization existed before the Council? Before any of us? Then we bury that evidence along with humanity, Zenar said coldly. The stability of the galactic order depends on the Council's authority. If species start questioning our historical narrative, everything falls apart. On a human colony world called New Jeju, Dr. Minho carefully brushed dust away from a section of wall deep inside an ancient structure. The structure was enormous, built from materials that human science couldn't fully explain. But it was the writing on the walls that made his hand shake with excitement. Dispatch, this is Minho. I need a secure channel to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. His assistant Soman looked up from her own excavation site. You found something. Look at this. Minho pointed to a series of symbols carved into the wall. This is Hangul, ancient Hangul. Korean writing from at least 30,000 years ago. Here, 1,500 light years from Earth. Soman moved closer, her eyes widening. That's impossible. Korea didn't exist 30,000 years ago. Humans weren't even building cities yet, weren't we? Minho ran his fingers over the symbols. Or did we just forget? These ruins are everywhere in the Forbidden Zones, and they're all human. Same architecture, same materials, same writing systems from Earth languages. Someone was here. Someone from Earth, or somewhere we came from, built all of this. The Council must know, Soman said. That's why these zones are forbidden. They don't want anyone to find out that humans were here first. Minho pulled out his portable scanner and began recording everything. Get all of this documented. Every symbol, every structure, every piece of evidence. When the Council comes for us, and they will, we need proof that can't be denied. Back on the Council station, Karvesh requested a private meeting with High Arbiter Velthuum. They met in a small chamber, shielded from any recording devices. I've been doing my own research, Karvesh said without preamble, into the origins of the Forbidden Zones. The Council's official records say they were designated as off-limits due to environmental hazards and unstable stellar phenomena. That is correct, Velthuum said stiffly. But the oldest records, the ones from when the Council was first formed, tell a different story. They say the zones were forbidden because they contained evidence of the precursor civilization, a civilization that the Council's founders feared and wanted to forget. Those records are sealed for a reason. Because they're true, aren't they? Karvesh moved closer. The ancient species that founded the Council discovered ruins left by humans. They found evidence that humanity had already achieved spaceflight, had already colonized these regions tens of thousands of years ago. And then something happened. Some catastrophe that destroyed human civilization and reduced them to primitives on their homeworld. Velthuum's crystalline form flickered rapidly. If this is true, and I'm not saying it is, then you understand why it must remain secret. The Council's authority rests on the belief that we are the elder species, that we brought order to a chaotic galaxy. If other species learn that humans were here first, that we built our civilization on the ruins of theirs, the Council falls apart, Karvesh finished. But it's going to fall apart anyway. Humanity isn't going to keep this secret. Ambassador Deho as much as told us they found something. It's only a matter of time before they reveal it to the galaxy. Then we need to act before they can. Karvesh was quiet for a moment. There might be another way. What if we offered them a seat on the Council? Full membership, equal status. In exchange for their silence about the ruins. The other counselors would never agree. Not all of them need to agree. We just need enough to prevent Xenar from launching his war. Because if the Drexians attack and humanity defends itself successfully, every species in the galaxy will start asking questions. Why are humans so strong? What technology did they find? What else is the Council hiding? Velthuum considered this. You believe humanity would accept such an offer? No, Karvesh said honestly. But making the offer buys us time. Time to prepare for whatever is coming. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Jiwan received a priority communication from Dr. Minho. She listened to his report in silence, her expression growing more serious with each passing second. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You're certain about this? She asked. Absolutely. We found ruins on 6 different worlds now. All of them human. All of them ancient. This isn't a coincidence. Our ancestors were here, and they're going to try to destroy this evidence, Jiwan said. The Council can't allow this information to spread. What do we do? Jiwan looked at the holographic displays around her, showing human fleets preparing for war. We do what Ambassador Deho said. We refuse to back down. We make them come to us. And when they do, we show them that humanity didn't forget everything. We've been preparing for this for a very long time. She terminated the connection and opened a channel to all fleet commanders. All units, this is Fleet Admiral Jiwan. Assume war footing. I want every ship ready for immediate deployment. The Council is going to try to silence us. We're not going to let that happen. Across human space, warships powered up their engines and weapon systems. In the Forbidden Zones, colonists began preparing defenses. On Earth, President Dong-Hyun addressed the United Earth government in a closed session. The Council thinks we're young and weak, he said. They think we'll surrender when faced with their superior numbers. They don't understand that we're not fighting to win. We're fighting to survive long enough for the truth to come out. Once the galaxy knows what we found, once they understand that humanity was here first, the Council's authority is finished. The 30-day deadline began to count down. Neither side was willing to blink first. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the war that seemed inevitable. Director Hai-Jin sat in her office in Seoul, watching data streams flow across multiple screens. As the head of Human Intelligence Services, she had spent the past 5 years preparing for this exact moment. Not the war itself, but the information war that would determine its outcome. The leak is ready, her assistant reported. We can release it to the galactic networks at any time. Hai-Jin studied the data one more time. Dr. Minho's archaeological findings, cross-referenced with genetic analysis, historical records, and astronomical data. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans had been in space 30,000 years ago. They had built the structures in the Forbidden Zones, and somehow the Council had known about it all along. Release it, she said. All channels. Make sure it reaches every species in the galaxy simultaneously. Within hours, the carefully compiled data package began spreading through the galactic communication networks. Scientists, historians, and ordinary citizens across thousands of worlds started downloading the information. What they found shocked them. On the Council station, alarms began sounding in the intelligence division. Technicians scrambled to contain the data leak, but it was already too late. The information had been designed to replicate and spread, using techniques that no one had seen before. Every time they shut down one distribution node, 3 more appeared. It's everywhere, an aide reported to High Arbiter Velthuum. Every major network, every academic database, every news service. They've even embedded it in entertainment channels. There's no way to stop it now. Velthuum watched as his carefully maintained order began to crumble. On dozens of worlds, species that had been loyal Council members for thousands of years were now questioning everything they'd been taught about galactic history. But the real crisis came from an unexpected direction. 5 Council species, led by the Virani, issued a joint statement demanding immediate access to the Forbidden Zones for independent verification of the human claims. They weren't siding with humanity exactly, but they were breaking ranks with the Council. This is a disaster. Councilor Zenar raged. We're losing control. We already lost control, Karvish said quietly. The moment humanity refused our ultimatum, this became inevitable. Now we have to decide if we're going to fight to preserve a lie or adapt to the truth. Zenar's gray face twisted with fury. I will not sit here and watch the Council dissolve. If the rest of you lack the spine for action, the Drexian Empire will act alone. He left the chamber immediately. Within 2 hours, a Drexian battle fleet was en route to New Jeju, the human colony where Dr. Minho had made his discoveries. Zenar's orders were clear. Destroy the ruins, eliminate the colonists, and send a message that would terrify humanity into submission. Captain Sungho received the warning from long-range sensors when the Drexian fleet was still 3 days out. He stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, humanity's first true warship built with ancient technology, and felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. How many ships? He asked his tactical officer. 43 Drexian warships. Heavy cruisers and destroyers. They're not hiding their approach. They want us to know they're coming. Sun Ho nodded. Battle readiness. Inform Fleet Admiral Jiwan that we're about to test our new toys for real. The Indomitable was unlike any ship humanity had built before. Its hull was constructed from materials found in the ancient ruins. Materials that seemed to absorb and redirect energy in ways that human science was still struggling to understand. Its weapons were based on technology that the progenitors, as they now called the ancient humans, had developed 30,000 years ago. All crew to stations, Sun Ho ordered. We're going to give the galaxy a show they won't forget. 3 days later, the Drexian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the new Jeju system. General Cray, the fleet commander, studied his tactical displays with satisfaction. The human colony was defenseless, just a few civilian ships in orbit and some basic defensive satellites. Prepare to open fire on the colony, he ordered. Destroy everything. Buildings, ships, the archaeological sites. Leave nothing standing. Sir, we're detecting one warship in the system. Designation: Indomitable. It's moving to intercept. Cray laughed. One ship? They send one ship against 43? He zoomed in on the tactical display. The Indomitable was smaller than his cruisers, sleek and dark, moving with unusual grace. Destroy it. Make an example of them. 10 of his destroyers broke formation and moved toward the human ship. Their weapons charged, deadly energy weapons that could vaporize a city in seconds. They fired simultaneously, enough firepower to destroy a dozen ships. The Indomitable didn't try to dodge. The energy blasts struck its hull and simply vanished, absorbed into the strange material. Before the Drexian crews could react, the human ship fired back. Its weapons didn't look like traditional energy beams or missiles. They looked like ripples in space itself, distortions that move faster than light should allow. When they hit the Drexian destroyers, the ships simply came apart, their hulls shredding like paper in a hurricane. All 10 destroyers were destroyed in under 30 seconds. What was that? Cray shouted. What kind of weapon? The Indomitable accelerated, moving at speeds that should have been impossible for a ship its size. It wove through the Drexian fleet like a dancer, firing those impossible weapons. Each shot destroyed or crippled a Drexian ship. The heavy cruisers tried to engage, but their weapons couldn't penetrate the Indomitable's hull, and their shields were useless against the humans' weapons dot in less than 10 minutes. Half the Drexian fleet was destroyed or disabled. The rest were in full retreat, fleeing the system as fast as their engines could carry them. Captain Sun Ho watched them go, then opened a communication channel that he knew would be intercepted and recorded by observers across the galaxy. This is Captain Sun Ho of the Indomitable to all Drexian forces. Tell your council that this is what happens when you attack humanity. Tell them we have 100 ships like this one. Tell them we've barely begun to unlock what our ancestors left for us. He closed the channel and turned to his crew. Well done, everyone. Get me a damage report. No damage to report, sir. Their weapons couldn't even scratch our hull. Sun Ho smiled grimly. Good, because this was just the opening act. The recording of the battle spread through the galaxy even faster than the archaeological data had. Every species saw the same thing. A single human ship obliterating a Drexian fleet using technology that seemed like magic. The implications were terrifying. On the council station, the remaining councilors watched the recording in stunned silence. Even Velthuum, who had suspected humanity might have advanced technology, hadn't expected this level of superiority. They've had this capability for years, Karvesh said softly. They could have attacked us at any time. They could have demanded council seats, territory, resources. But they didn't. They just quietly settled in the forbidden zones and studied the ruins. Why? Another counselor asked, "Why didn't they use this power?" "Because they were preparing for something," Belthuum said, his crystalline form flickering with uncertainty. Ambassador Deho said they found something in those zones. Something that changes everything. What if the ancient humans left more than just ruins and weapons? What if they left a warning? Director Haijin, watching the same recordings from Earth, allowed herself a small smile. Phase 1 of the plan was complete. The Council's military superiority was exposed as an illusion. Their historical authority was crumbling. Now came the hard part. She opened a secure channel to Ambassador Deho, who was still aboard his ship near the Council station. "The fracture has begun," she said. 5 species have broken ranks. Another dozen are wavering. The Drexians are in chaos after their defeat. How long until the Council collapses completely? "Days," Deho replied. "Maybe weeks. But that's not our real problem. Our real problem is what happens when they figure out why we're really here. Why we need the Forbidden Zones, the warning." Dr. Minho found more data in the ruins. The progenitors didn't just disappear. They were nearly wiped out fighting something. Something from outside the galaxy. And according to their records, it's coming back. Haijin felt a chill run down her spine. Does Fleet Admiral Jiwan know? She knows. President Dongyun knows. The Security Council knows. We're keeping it classified for now, because the galaxy isn't ready for that truth yet. First, we need to break the Council's power. Then we need to convince every species out there that we're not their enemy, that we're trying to save them, and if they don't believe us? Deho was quiet for a moment. Then, we save ourselves and let the rest of them figure it out on their own. We didn't start this fight, but we're going to finish it. Across the galaxy, the old order continued to crumble. Species that had followed the Council for millennia were now questioning everything. Some formed new alliances. Others declared independence. A few even reached out to humanity, asking for access to the progenitor technology that the Galactic Council, which had maintained peace and order for 3,000 years, was fracturing. And at the center of it all stood humanity, ancient and new at the same time, holding secrets that would change the fate of the entire galaxy. President Dongyun stood before the United Earth government in the secure bunker beneath Geneva. The assembled representatives from every nation on Earth watched him with expressions ranging from fear to determination. Above them, projected on massive screens, was a tactical display showing the largest military fleet ever assembled in galactic history. "They're coming," Dongyun said simply. 10,000 warships from 7 different species. The Council's hardliners have united under Drexian leadership. War Marshal Krekther is commanding the fleet personally. Their declared intention is to eliminate humanity as a threat to galactic peace. "Can we win?" someone asked. Dongyun looked at Fleet Admiral Jiwan, who stood beside him. She stepped forward, her uniform crisp and her expression unreadable. "We can't win a direct battle against 10,000 ships," Jiwan said bluntly. "Even with progenitor technology, we don't have enough vessels. What we can do is make the cost of defeating us so high that they'll never recover. We can drag them into a grinding war that will destroy both sides." "That's not a victory," another representative protested. "No," Jiwan agreed. "It's not. That's why we're not going to fight them at all." The chamber erupted in confused voices. Dongyun raised his hand for silence. "Explain," he said to Jiwan. "The Council fleet is coming to prove a point. They want to crush us publicly, to show the galaxy that defying them leads to destruction. They expect us to defend our colonies, to fight desperately for every world. That's the story they want to tell." Jiwan's eyes hardened. "We're going to tell a different story." 3 weeks later, the Council's armada arrived at the border of human space. War Marshal Krekther stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed even the largest human vessels. Around him, 10,000 warships moved in perfect formation, the combined might of 7 species united in purpose. "Send the message to all human colonies," Krekther ordered. "Surrender immediately or be destroyed. They have 6 hours to respond." His communications officer looked confused. "Sir, we're not receiving any response. In fact, we're not detecting any communications at all from the human colonies." "They're afraid," Krekther said with satisfaction. "As they should be. Continue the advance." The fleet moved deeper into human territory. They passed the first colony world, weapons charged and ready. But something was wrong. The scanners showed no life signs. No ships in orbit. No defensive platforms. Nothing. "Sir, the colony is empty. Completely evacuated," Krekther frowned. "Check the next system. They found the same thing. Empty colonies, abandoned stations, no sign of human presence anywhere." It was as if humanity had simply vanished. "This is a trap," one of his officers suggested. "They're drawing us in." "Then where are they?" Krekther demanded. "Where are their ships? Their defenses?" For 2 days, the Council fleet moved through human space, finding nothing but empty worlds. No battles, no resistance, nothing to fight. The warriors who had come expecting glorious combat found only ghost towns and silence. Then they received a transmission. It was from Special Envoy Yuna, a young woman with a calm face and steady eyes. She appeared on every screen in the fleet simultaneously. "War Marshal Krekther," she said, "I speak for humanity. We know why you've come. You want to destroy us as an example. You want to show the galaxy what happens to species that defy the Council." She paused. "We're not going to give you that satisfaction." "Where are you?" Krekther demanded. "Where are your people?" "Safe," Yuna replied. "Far beyond your reach. We didn't evacuate because we're afraid of you. We evacuated because we don't want to rule you, and we don't want to kill you. But we will if you force us to." Brave words from someone in hiding. Yuna smiled slightly. "We're not hiding. We're at these coordinates." She transmitted a star map. "This is a system deep in the Forbidden Zones. The original human homeworld before the Exodus 30,000 years ago. Come find us there. Come see what your council has been hiding from you all along." The transmission ended. Krekther stared at the coordinates for a long moment. It was obviously a trap. But he had 10,000 ships. What could humanity possibly do? "Set course," he ordered. "All vessels, maximum alert. We finished this." The fleet traveled for 6 days to reach the coordinates. When they dropped out of faster-than-light travel, they found themselves in a star system unlike any they'd seen before. 3 planets orbited a yellow sun. But it was the outermost planet that caught their attention. It was surrounded by a network of satellites and stations, thousands of them, all dormant but clearly functional. And they were ancient, constructed with the same technology as the ruins humanity had found. "Sir, we're detecting massive power signatures from those stations," a sensor officer reported. "They're activating." All across the fleet, alarms began sounding. The ancient defense network was coming online. Systems that had slept for 30,000 years, waking up in response to the intruders. Energy readings spiked off the charts. Weapons platforms, older than any galactic civilization, swiveled toward the Council fleet. "Evasive action," Krekther shouted. "Return fire." But before a single Council ship could fire, every screen in the fleet lit up with the same message. It was a recording, but the voice was human, speaking in a language that translation software identified as Ancient Korean. "This is the final archive of the Progenitor Defense Network. If you are seeing this, you have entered this system with hostile intent. You have one opportunity to withdraw. This is not a negotiation. This is a warning. Krekther's tactical officer's voice was shaking. Sir, I'm reading weapon signatures from those platforms. They're using technology we've never seen before. Power levels are. They're orders of magnitude beyond anything in our fleet. If they fire what? Krekther demanded. They could destroy the entire fleet. All 10,000 ships. In seconds. The ancient platforms continued to track the Council vessels. On the planet below, more systems activated. Massive structures rose from the surface. Weapons that made the orbiting platforms look like toys in comparison. Another transmission came through. This time, it was Ambassador Deho. War Marshal Krekther, he said. What you're seeing is a tiny fraction of what humanity built 30,000 years ago. These defenses protected this system from threats you can't imagine. They're still functional. Still deadly. Still ready to defend what's ours. This is impossible, Krekther said. Your species was primitive 1,000 years ago. How could you have built this? We didn't build it 1,000 years ago, Deho replied. We built it 30,000 years ago, before your species even existed. Before the Council, before the Elder races, before any of you looked up at the stars and dreamed of space. Humanity was here first. Across the Council fleet, crews watched their sensors in growing horror. The power readings from the ancient defenses were still climbing. If those weapons fired, there would be no survivors. We came here to destroy you, Krekther said, his voice losing its certainty. You came here to preserve the Council's authority, Deho corrected, to prove that you're still the dominant power in the galaxy. But you're not. You never were. You built your civilization on the ruins of ours, and you convinced yourselves you were the first. The elder species. The wise ones who brought order to chaos. Why? Krekther asked. Why didn't you use this power before? You could have conquered the galaxy. Because we don't want to conquer anything, Deho said, and his voice held genuine weariness. Our ancestors nearly destroyed themselves. They learned that power without wisdom leads to extinction. So they hid these weapons, these defenses, hoping that if humanity ever needed them again, we'd be wise enough to use them properly. And now we're giving you the same choice we've been trying to give you all along. Leave, return to your worlds. Tell your people the truth about galactic history. Help us prepare for what's coming. What's coming? Krekther asked. Deho's expression grew dark. The reason the progenitors built these defenses. The reason they nearly went extinct. An extragalactic invasion that we barely survived 30,000 years ago. And it's coming back. The bridge of Krekther's flagship was silent. Every crew member was listening now. Not just to Deho's words, but to the implications behind them. These weapons, these defenses, they weren't built to fight other galactic species, Deho continued. They were built to fight something far worse, something that's still out there. And when it arrives, none of us will survive unless we work together. Krekther looked at his tactical displays. 10,000 ships. The greatest military force ever assembled in this galaxy. And they were completely outmatched by a defense network built before any of them existed. The humiliation was total. But worse than the humiliation was the growing realization that Deho might be telling the truth. That humanity wasn't their enemy. That they'd wasted time and resources preparing to fight the wrong war. Withdraw, Krekther said quietly. Sir? His second-in-command asked. I said withdraw. All ships, return to Council space immediately. No hostile action. As the massive fleet began turning around, preparing to jump back to faster-than-light travel, Krekther opened a private channel to Deho. You didn't destroy us when you could have, he said. No, Deho agreed. Why not? 6 months had passed of the Council fleet's retreat. The Galactic Council no longer existed in any meaningful way. 3 of the 12 founding species had completely withdrawn from galactic politics. 4 more had formed their own regional alliances. The remaining 5 were engaged in desperate negotiations with each other, trying to salvage something from the collapse of 3,000 years of tradition. Dr. Minho stood in the newly established Progenitor Trust, headquarters on the planet humanity now called Haven. It was the restored archive world, the system where the ancient human defenses had turned back the Council fleet without firing a shot. Around him, scientists from 40 different species worked side by side, studying progenitor technology and sharing the knowledge freely. "We've completed the linguistic analysis of the database," his assistant Soman reported. She was older now, her hair showing streaks of gray from the stress of the past months. The progenitors left detailed records of everything: their rise, their civilization, the war, and the aftermath. "Tell me," Minho said, though he already knew what she was going to say. He'd read the preliminary reports. 35,000 years ago, humanity had colonized this entire region of space. Hundreds of worlds, billions of people, technology that made current galactic civilization look primitive. Soman pulled up holographic displays showing ancient star maps. Then something came from beyond the galaxy. The records call them the Devourers. Not a single species, but a collective of machines and biological entities that consumed everything in their path. And humanity fought them. For 500 years, Soman confirmed. It was total war. The progenitors threw everything they had at the Devourers. They developed weapons that could destroy entire fleets, defenses that could protect star systems. They won, eventually, but the cost was catastrophic. Minho stared at the ancient records. How many survived? Less than 1% of the original population. Most of the colony worlds were destroyed. The survivors retreated to Earth and went into hiding, hoping that if the Devourers ever returned, they wouldn't be noticed. Over thousands of years, they lost their technology, their history, everything. They became the primitive humans that would eventually rediscover spaceflight. And the Devourers? Soman's expression grew grim. They weren't destroyed, just pushed back. The progenitor records predict they would return in approximately 30 to 35,000 years, which means they're almost here. Yes, in a conference chamber elsewhere in the facility. Ambassador Deho sat across from former Council of Karvesh and representatives from 200 different species. The meeting had been going on for 3 days, with more delegates arriving each hour. "We need to establish some kind of order," Karvesh was saying. "The galaxy is fragmenting into thousands of independent nations. Without central authority, without coordination, we're vulnerable." "The Council had central authority," Deho replied calmly. "It didn't make you stronger. It made you complacent. You spent 3,000 years believing you were the dominant power in the galaxy, never questioning, never preparing for real threats. And now you want to replace the Council with human authority?" A delegate demanded. "No," Deho said firmly. "We don't want to rule you. We never did. That's why we refuse your ultimatum. That's why we withdrew instead of fighting. We don't want subjects or servants. We want allies. Then what do you propose?" Deho stood and activated a holographic display. "This is the Progenitor Trust. Not a government, not a council. Just an organization dedicated to managing the ancient technology and preparing for the threat that's coming. Any species can join. Any species can access the technology, the knowledge, the defenses. But you have to contribute. You have to work together. You have to be honest about galactic history." "You're asking us to admit that everything we believed was wrong," someone said. "I'm asking you to accept the truth," Deho corrected. "Humanity was here first. We're not better than you because of that. We're not superior. We're just older. And we made mistakes, terrible mistakes that nearly destroyed us. Learn from those mistakes. Don't repeat them. A delegate from the Varani species stood. What about the defenses? The weapons? You control them. That gives you absolute power. We're sharing them, Deho said. Right now, teams from 40 species are working in our facilities, learning how to build and operate progenitor technology. We're teaching you everything we've learned. Because when the Devourers come, you'll need these weapons too. When? The question came from War Marshal Krekther, who had been sitting silently at the back of the chamber. After the retreat of his fleet, he'd resigned his position and joined the Progenitor Trust as a military advisor. When will they arrive? Deho looked at him steadily. Between 45 and 55 years. That's our best estimate based on the progenitor records and current long-range sensor data. The chamber fell silent. 50 years seemed like a long time, but everyone in the room understood it wasn't. Building ships, training crews, coordinating defensive networks across thousands of worlds. All of that would take decades. We don't have much time, Krekther said. And we're not ready. No, Deho agreed. We're not. That's why we need to start now. On Earth, President Dong-Yun addressed the United Earth government for what he announced would be his final time. He was retiring, he explained, to work full-time with the Progenitor Trust. His successor would be elected within the month. We've changed the galaxy, he told the assembled representatives. Not through conquest or domination, but by refusing to accept the lies we were told. By standing up for the truth, even when it seemed impossible. He paused, looking at each of them. But our work is just beginning. The Devourers are coming. Our ancestors nearly died fighting them. We have 50 years to make sure we're ready this time. Can we win? Someone asked. Dong-Hyun smiled slightly. Our ancestors won when they were alone, when they had to bear the entire burden themselves. This time, we have the entire galaxy fighting with us. Every species, every world, every ship. United not by force, but by common cause. His expression grew serious. Can we win? I don't know, but I know we're going to try. Captain Sunho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as it prepared for its next mission. His ship had become famous across the galaxy, the vessel that had destroyed a Drexian fleet without taking a scratch. Now it would serve a different purpose. Navigation. Set course for the Galactic Rim, he ordered. Science team, prepare your long-range sensors. We're going hunting. His first officer looked at him questioningly. Hunting, sir? We need to know exactly where the Devourers are, Sunho explained. How far out? How many? What they're capable of now. The progenitor records are 30,000 years old. The enemy might have changed, evolved. We need current intelligence. That's a dangerous mission. Sunho smiled. Every mission is dangerous now. But someone has to go. And the Indomitable is the fastest, toughest ship we have. The ship jumped to faster than light travel, heading toward the edge of the galaxy where no one had ventured in millennia. Behind it, across human space and beyond, the work of preparation continued. Fleet Admiral Jiwan oversaw the construction of new shipyards in orbit around every human world. The designs were based on progenitor technology, but improved with modern understanding. Thousands of vessels were being built, not just for humanity, but for any species that wanted them. Dr. Minho and his teams worked day and night in the archives, translating ancient texts, understanding old technologies, finding every advantage they could. The progenitors had left detailed records of their war, including their mistakes and failures. Humanity wouldn't repeat those mistakes. Director Haijin coordinated the massive intelligence-sharing network that now connected hundreds of species. Information about the Devourers, about defensive strategies, about resource allocation. All of it flowed through secure channels to everyone who needed it. Throughout the galaxy, old enemies became allies. The Drexians, once the most aggressive military power, became some of the most dedicated defenders. War Marshal Krekthor trained mixed-species combat units, teaching them tactics developed from 30,000 years of recorded warfare. Counselor Karvesh helped establish new trade networks to ensure resources reached where they were needed. Species that have been rivals for centuries learned to work together, united by the knowledge of what was coming. In a small facility on Haven, historian Soman compiled the true history of the galaxy. She documented everything: the rise of the progenitors, their war with the Devourers, their fall, and humanity's long climb back to the stars. She recorded the Council's 3,000-year reign and its collapse. Most importantly, she documented the new beginning, the moment when the galaxy stopped fighting itself and started preparing for a common threat. Future generations need to understand how we got here, she explained to her research team. They need to know that we chose cooperation over domination, that we learned from our mistakes. Do you think we'll survive? One of her assistants asked. Soman looked up at the stars visible through the facility's transparent ceiling. The progenitors survived with less technology and no allies. We have both. We have 50 years to prepare.